Have you ever wondered what gym leaders would look like if they would use a different typing? Today we'll be taking a look at this concept and we'll start with gym leader Brock. However, we aren't just going to give him other Pokemon, we will be swapping his original Pokemon into a different typing too. For this type swap, we're going for a grass typing. Before we move into the Pokemon themselves, I also wanted to take a look at transforming the design of Brock himself. I did however fall back onto the photoshopping method, which of course involves some tracing elements, because I've never drawn humans before and was feeling a bit burned out on drawing as well. My goal for this drawing was to not make him look too extra and keep him close to the essence of what Brock is. Just a simple dude who loves his Pokemon, but is very serious and professional in battle with them. I made sure to grab some reference from all the already existing grass type gym leaders out there. This gave me a bunch of ideas I was able to use, which made me realize that these type of gym leaders don't necessarily scream grass or foresty elements, but mostly have a design that either show their connection with nature or just use the simple color green. Now that I knew that, I started bringing in some details like flower pots hanging on the side of his legs, the leafy scarf around his neck, the wooden belt, and I gave his shirt a pine forest look. I mostly had fun with the addition of the colors, where I just tried playing around with them until I got the look I was going for. Well everyone, meet Broccoli, the leader of the Pewter City's grass gym. Time to face him and his team. The first member of his team is a grass version of Graveler. This character wasn't that difficult to replicate since his body consists out of a single sphere and some limbs attached to it. Of course it is always difficult to actually draw hands and arms in general, but my idea for this Pokemon allowed me to be a bit rough on the design, which gave me a lot of wiggle room on that department. Once we managed to get the body onto our canvas, we moved on to the grassy elements. I started by changing his arms into wooden versions of themselves, because my goal for this piece was to make a bushy ball with wooden limbs sticking out of it. Once all of the arms were done, I moved on to his eyebrow area, where we added a few branches to give him a bit more depth and to play around with his expression. I did debate on making the legs into grassy ones, but ultimately decided to make them wooden as well. The last detail I brought onto the wooden elements were some small extrusions which gave the piece a lot more depth too. The only thing I had left to do was to add in the body shape, and with some tweaking here and there, we actually were able to make a cool looking design. I know I never talk about the line art phase, but there just isn't much to say about it without going into an in-depth tutorial. Let me know if you have any questions about them in the comments and I will respond to all of them. For the colors, I make sure to color drop from already existing Pokemon, so I don't move too far away from the colors the official Pokemon company would use for their designs. We went with one shade of brown for all of the wooden elements and went with a darker shade of brown for his fingers. We then filled in the bush area with a nice green color and gave the middle area a darker variant too. This gave the Pokemon a bearded look, which I found quite amusing. Mossolder, the forest bully Pokemon. This Pokemon rests at the base of woodland trees. When they aren't sleeping, they climb up trees to then roll back down and crash into anything that gets in their path. They pick off some of the moss from their bodies and roll them into balls to throw at unsuspecting Pokemon. These behaviors have dubbed Mossolder the forest bullies. I am really happy with this design. It really captures the essence of Graveler, but also has adopted into his new typing extremely well. I did make him into a part ground type, because at first I felt like keeping the same secondary typing the regular Pokemon has, but I did change this up later in this video. The second member of Broccoli's team is a grassy Rhyhorn. I will start out by saying that I tried doing our new sketching technique at first, but I just knew that this drawing was going to take forever if I did. This is why I fell back onto our old ways, and to let out a small secret, we did it for some other of these drawings as well. I know people will always hate on me doing so, but please cut me some slack, because these designs are quite difficult to make and a big step up from simple first and even second stage pseudo legendaries. I will do my best to avoid using this technique and will continue to challenge myself to improve my drawing skills. but don't hate on me if I ever fall back onto it, please. For the design itself, we began by adding a big chunk of leaves to his head and ran it down all the way to the tip of his tail. We also added some leaves to his bottom jaw to slightly suggest a beard and overgrown aesthetic in general. This alone wouldn't be enough of a change, so I came up with the idea to use a part steel typing and gave him 2 big spikes to each side of his body. We do however change up the typing due to the use of the colors, but more on that in a second. The final details we gave him were some underbite teeth, and we added an extra nail to each of his feet. Now it is actually time to talk about the colors, and we decided to move away from the cold steel colors because this would make it look too similar to a regular Rhyhorn. We went with an earthy color palette for his body and used a sandy color for the main parts and a brown color for the spikes and teeth. The green however had to be the main focus of the design, so we went with a bright green variant to really make it stand out. I am actually a huge fan of this color palette, and it currently does look a little bit like shiny Rhyhorn, but we managed to make this shiny look absolutely different and absolutely fire. Rhyhorn, the hard thorn Pokemon. This Pokemon loves to run across empty fields in large herds. However, the only thing that can stop a herd of charging Rhyhorns is loads of trees to stand in their way. This completely wrecks them when one of the Rhyhorns topples over, and the rest will then just follow. It isn't very intelligent either, so it can run for hours plowing down trees without even realizing the damage it's causing. It isn't necessarily the biggest change ever, but I really like the end result. Like I said about the shiny, it really does look a bit like a magma infused walking rock, and I know that might not be the best fit thematically, but come on. It looks good on another level. I created a brush set with all my favorite brushes. I use each of them with every drawing that I make, so if you want to draw in the same style as me, I recommend checking out my website. For only €5.99, you can get the Procreate brush set, which you will be able to use in Procreate. It includes an amazing line art brush, a highlight brush which instantly makes your pieces look a lot better, and many other fantastic brushes. I also want to have a written down version of how to create Paradox Pokemon. That's why I created this step-by-step guide. It's easy to follow, and I added a bunch more tips you can use while drawing. You will also get the work files of the 2 Paradox Pokemon we created, and I added 2 work files with just a line art so you can practice coloring and shading. This guide is also available for €5.99 on my website, but since I thought you guys might be interested in buying it together with the brush set, I made it into a combi deal for only €8.99 for the both of them. That is a 25% discount, so I know what I would do. Up next is the third Pokemon of Broccoli's team, which is a grass form of Omastar. For this drawing we used our own sketching technique again, and we were able to quite quickly replicate the body and pose of Omastar, since it's basically a sphere for the shell and a sphere for his face, with of course the tentacles sticking out from there. The direction of the design itself was pretty clear from the start as well, because I still wanted to keep the part water typing in there, and there's one thing that instantly sells as a grass type from the ocean, which is seaweed. I decided to change all of his limbs and his body in general into this seaweed. This already helped a lot to portray both typings, but I wanted to play into a more deep sea version of Omastar. I did this by roughing up the shell into a more pointy one. I know if we're really going to talk about actual deep sea creatures, they are mostly made out of a slimy substance, so they don't collapse by the harsh pressure from the water at that depth. But let's just say this is a deep sea creature, but not a that deep sea creature. For the colors I first tried to use a green like blue for its body, but this didn't make it look enough like seaweed, so I opted into a more green variant of that hue. Algastar, the Kraken Pokemon. It is said that Algastar lurks in the depths of the ocean, only rising to the sea's surface once every so often to devour a captain and its crew who dare to venture out above its home. Algastar constricts their target and slowly consumes them through the vortex of teeth that can crush any metal known to man. At first I didn't make this Pokemon too much bigger than a regular Omastar, but after revisiting this design during editing, I figured it looked quite similar to a Kraken and used that as a reference. I didn't want to make him too big however, so I went with a scary height, but not a world-ending one. The second to last member of his team is the grass variant of Kabutops. I once again went back to my old ways for this design and started on changing his features immediately. We began by changing the side parts of his head into a grass-like fur and replaced his back spikes with something similar as well. We then changed his upper legs to resemble grass too. The next thing we did was to simplify his sides, but we did make sure to add a segment between the arm and the scythe to bring back some depth into the design. At first I wanted to go into a grass bug typing, but eventually decided to switch it up by going into a part fire typing, which is just a way cooler typing in my opinion. The moment where you can actually see that typing is once we put in the colors. I did play around with them for a while, but in the end decided to go with a lot of green together with some orange accents for his attacking parts. This is something that I already knew would work well, but this piece was a good reminder of that. Sometimes we tend to think that using only one color on the design, with different shades of course, looks aesthetically pleasing, but your design can look so much better if you just add one different complementary accent color to it. Kabutops, the Fireblade Pokemon. Supposedly a relative of Scyther, Kabutops scorches wildlife with its blades of fire, also causing wildfires that destroy entire ecosystems. Evidence leads scientists to believe that Kabutops was the main cause of Genesect going extinct. It is so fun to see that even only a color palette change can already do so insanely much for a drawing. Together with some cool changes to the design itself, you can really make a good looking Pokemon. I did also bring in the more fiery colors for his shiny, and I guess it also plays into a more fall-like color palette, which is quite nice. For the ace and final Pokemon of Broccoli's team, we're taking a look at grass type Onix. I will say that at first I didn't have a clue on what to do with this design. I thought it would have been an easy transformation, but I didn't just want to copy the same design elements I used for Graveler's new form. This made me opt into a grass turf / hedge kind of look. I managed to sort of get it to look like that by breaking up his body into two different segments, one ground one and the other one as the grass part. We did also break these two elements up with a green segment line in between them. For the most part I was debating if I wanted to add more details onto the design, like some flowers for example. I even tried to add a big one on his forehead, but that looked absolutely hideous, so I completely scrapped that feature. Now that I look back at the design, I can clearly see some perspective issues, especially with the body connecting to the head. This is still something I need to get a lot better at, but that's exactly why I will never claim that I'm the best artist out there, because I don't think I ever will be. But hey, practice makes perfect. Still practicing every day, we will get somewhere at least. The colors were quite simple, and we went with a dark brown for his bottom part and used a light green for the upper part of his body. The segment line in between these layers got a soccer field color, or that's just how I see it, and I even gave it that blocky mode shading. I did also bring in a yellow color for his mouth and played around with it for his eyes as well, but I wanted the yellow color to portray his electric attacking power, so I decided to just make his eyes brown to match his earthy belly side. Hedge, the hedge Pokemon. This Pokemon lies partially on the ground, with the top of its body exposed to the skies as a hedge. Anything that touches its back will get a shock of electricity. Edge can coil itself up and lock its jaws on the end of its tail to make a circuit of electricity with the energy it has stored in its body. This allows him to create a force field around itself. It also has a unique ability called Fold Up. This makes it so the Pokemon takes no damage when hit by electric type moves. Instead, its attack stat is boosted by 1 stage. I wouldn't say that this is the best work I have ever done, but the concept of it is actually quite cool. Next time I hope my execution is just a little bit better too. Well everyone, this was what Brock would look like if he and his Pokemon would be part of a Grass Gym. Next week I will be taking a look at Misty, since I will be doing all the Kanto gym leaders if you like this challenge as much as I do. Let me know which type you want to see for Misty's team, and you could actually leave some type ideas for the other Kanto gym leaders as well. Alright, let me know which design was your favorite, and goodbye.